Welcome everybody to Webheads Comic Book Club. You always smile like I do. Your voice is fucked up again.
Again? What? No, it's not.
It is, I swear to God.
No.
What is?
It's normal on my end. Define fucked up. Maybe my wires.
It's like your boost is like fucking hot.
I don't know how that's possible. Let me see.
I'm blurry now, and there's nothing I can do about it.
No, the gain isn't touched. I don't know what.
Why am I blurry? Well,
how about now? Is it good?
There you go. Fix my autofocus too. There you go.
Am I
good?
good?
It's good now.
Okay,
yeah.
well, now I gotta turn myself back up because I'm back to quiet again. Okay, wait. Hello?
So welcome to the Webheads Comic Club. We read.
Test.
I'm not gonna be able to get to where we read.
Okay. Anyway, take 2. Still recording, so you can go for the intro whenever you're ready. I'll try not to smile.
I think I could look at you, but I know you're there. All right, other guys go.
See, I see you laughing, but the mic's not picking it up.
So because I'm silently laughing.
I know, but it's just it made it funnier.
Just fucking give me a minute, alright? I don't know I got the giggles today, alright? It's all the G Fuel. Alright, do it. Welcome everybody to Webheads Comic Book Club. Why are you immediately laughing?
Because you started it before I was done laughing.
My camera's changing colors. It's changing colors. Alright, can this be
We are professionals.
Welcome everybody to Webheads Comic Book Club. I'm JP along with
DA.
And for those of you who don't know, we, both of us, are going to read every issue of Amazing Spider-Man and talk about them here on this podcast. And this week we have issue 34 through issue 38, the end of Steve Ditko's run.
The end of an era.
Yes.
Fully. And honestly, I love Steve Ditko. Respect to the man, co-creator of Spider-Man. Kind of excited for the end of his era, though.
I mean, his art got really good towards the end, though.
It did. No, his art is great, and it's obviously iconic to Spider-Man, but, like, I'm very excited to get into the John Romita books.
No, yeah, I mean, John Romita is my favorite artist for Spider-Man, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, not Junior.
No,
not Junior. I mean, no hate, but, not Junior. But yeah, that's about it. We are in shambles, as you saw from the intro, because I'll probably include some of those outtakes. I'm
not doing well with this camera. I'm gonna fucking fix. I swear.
We are.
I will fix it. I will fix it. It's gonna be fixed.
Fully off our rocker, so you're here for an unhinged episode today.
I sat about 2 hours in an appointment for a guy to say, I don't know, and then I haven't eaten yet. So.
Relatable, because I also had a doctor's appointment recently, and I'm getting sick and tired of going to different doctor's appointments and just having them be like, yeah, we don't really know. I'm like, isn't that literally your job to know? Like, I have sympathy with you, it's hard to figure out whatever, but it's like, isn't that why I came to you as a doctor? To tell me?
It's not like they're getting their minimum wage over there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm paying them more money than I have, you know what I mean? So, like... That's a whole separate conversation, but
anyway, I will say though, you're in for one. You're in for one if you're listening. If you're watching, I'm sorry for what your eyes are seeing, but you're in for one. Now,
I think it's not as bad as you think it is.
Well, I'm overreacting. I'm a dramatic guy.
Yep.
Bit of a diva, I've been told. Now, issue 34 is what we start off with.
Yeah.
Which is Craven's return after the Sinister Six. I believe this is his third appearance in an issue, or his third actual appearance in an issue. I mean,
sounds right. Unless he was in some other series, but I don't know.
Yeah, third issue in the Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, he might have been in like Daredevil or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But he's back. I mean, okay, so for me, this run from issue 35 to 38, just cover-wise, I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but let's be honest, I do. In terms of these books, I see these covers and I see characters that I'm I'm not too interested in, or I don't know of. You know, I'm just
That
kind of like I'm probably going to be a little bit bored, and I was hoping that I'm going to go into this, be a little bit bored, and then actually really enjoy everything, not be bored, and be proven wrong. Sadly, from my experience, I was proven right.
that is what I was going to say for this episode. While there is a lot of great moments, and we're gonna talk
Yeah.
about it. I felt like this 5 issues was filled with a ton of villains that didn't hit it off, basically. Like a ton of villains that never really came back. I mean, the looter kind of came back at a later point, but like that Joe guy and
Well, I feel like we'll get to
Strom and his robots, like all these villains. Like we've been reading a lot of comic books that are like, oh, this is the first appearance of this iconic villain, and these are also like when you're reading the books, they're like, we're introducing a new villain next week, so it had like the same amount of hype as the other ones, but you could tell which ones worked and which ones didn't by like,
right.
Do we know them 60 years later?
Right.
The answer is no. But as far as 34, that's really the only one in these 5 issues that has like a main big Spider-Man villain in it, aside from Norman Osborn later. But it's Kraven the Hunter. And I personally don't really care for Kraven the Hunter.
Kraven's grown on me a lot.
From these issues?
Yes, that and just other issues I read. I've always liked Kraven, but yeah, I think getting to know his original character more, I do like him. And I'm excited to see where he goes, especially with storylines we know that come
Yeah.
in the very future.
Like obviously there's iconic, like Kraven's Last Hunt is great. They did Hunted in Nick Spencer's run, which I thought was pretty good. So like Kraven does have some cool storylines later, but just in these early issues, take a shot. Like issue his first appearance was 15, I think. I said it in that episode. I don't even know, probably episode 3. That I didn't really care that much for. It's kind of boring. He's just kind of like, I'm gonna hunt Spider-Man because I will. And I kind of felt the same in this issue. I'm glad it was a one-off. I'm glad they didn't make it like a multi-part story. It was just Kraven being like, all right, time to go catch Spider-Man, and using some trickery to try to capture him. But one thing I want to point out about this issue, or rather the arc over these 5 issues, we've said it almost every single episode because there's been a lot of false stops, but it seems like this is truly the end of Peter Parker and Betty Brant. Like truly, finally, definitively, they're done.
Okay, you have to answer me this. I know you're not in the future, but you're going to have to answer. Does Betty Brant end up dating Ned Leeds when he gets, like, framed?
Oh, yeah. They're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So I don't think it's ever going to be the end of anything in that sense, because there's definitely going to be an issue or issues in between where it's like, maybe not, even though she's with Leeds or not with Leeds yet.
I don't think so. I think she'll probably come back, but he'll have already moved on with Gwen probably, because we kind of saw like over these 5 issues, and we'll talk about it more as we get to the actual issues. Like him and Betty are seemingly over, and he's like heartbroken about it, like it's a breakup, right? And then we see him move on to Gwen a little bit, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But the main thing is in this issue 34, it shows they kind of did a little fake out, which I really liked. It cut to a scene of Peter and Betty where Peter's like, I'm Spider-Man. And I was reading this, and I was like,
no, I don't remember this. Right?
I was like, I did not know that Betty knew his identity. I know she knows it eventually. I'm pretty sure she knows it eventually.
Oh, spoiler, I didn't know that.
She might not. I might be completely wrong.
Probably does.
I'm thinking of, because I know she ends up dating Flash, and I think Flash knows. But no, Flash doesn't know. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, so I was very surprised, and then it's a fake out, and it's a dream, which basically confirms that she 100% like knows, but like doesn't actually.
Right. And that Peter was right. If she told her that, she wouldn't have a great reaction.
It's literally her worst nightmare, apparently.
Yeah, supposedly. So the one thing I'll say about this, getting back to Kraven, talking about Kraven, because I did have something to say. He's one of those Spider-Man one of those Spider-Man characters that are very one-dimensional, in which, at some point, when his actual life did end, at some point in these comics, it would have been pretty good for him to stay that way.
Yeah.
Because what else are you gonna really do? It's one of those things where it's like it would have been nice to actually see his story end and stay ended, but obviously it didn't.
Well, the problem with Craven, like you said, yeah, one dimensional. It's like he is driven by one singular goal, and that is just to hunt Spider-Man, right? And that's why they have Craven's last hunt, but it wasn't his last hunt. They have hunted. Like every time he comes back, it's always the same thing. Now there's a little bit more depth added later on, obviously, with his like relation, like him being brothers with Chameleon or whatever they are. I don't remember. Which I did think was kind of funny in this issue because he goes to like Chameleon's hideout from Sinister Six, and he's like, "I don't care about that guy," and I was just like. Yeah. Ain't that your brother?
Did do. Craven and like the Lizard are kind of where it's gonna be the same thing every time. I like the characters. I really like the Lizard and I really like Craven. But there's only really so much you can do with both of them.
Lizard has a little bit like they do some different things with Lizard.
Some different things, but is it really okay? He's a lizard. He does some wild stuff, tries to turn people into lizards, gets cured.
Well, they add some depth with like him being like it's Connor's consciousness in the lizard body versus like they do. I don't know. They try, but
still, it's not like a different some other character that has a lot more going on each time you see him. Usually,
yeah.
So it's been one of those things where I feel like, and the more these issues go on, the more some things are starting to repeat themselves. Like, once again, I think for the third or fourth time, Spider-Man is impersonated, this time by Craven.
Yeah.
So that's happening again in this issue. Okay. One of the things that continue to happen in each one of these issues is Peter just does not talk to any of his college classmates because he's in his head, and when he does try to talk to him, the damage is already done from before.
This guy.
And also, I know if you're deep in your thoughts, but people are yelling at you. Sometimes, at least once, you got to be like, "Oh, what's going on?" Like
it happens multiple times in these 5 issues where he is deep in thought and just completely oblivious to what is going on. Like people talking to him. I think there's even like a villain. It happens sometime when like there's a crime happening. And so he does try to. So we saw that last episode where he was starting to get a bad reputation at college because of that, because he was stressed about Aunt May. But he does try to address it in these issues where he's like, "Oh, let me actually try and talk to people." But even then, he totally puts his foot in his mouth. But in this issue, we see him start to kind of put the moves on Gwen. He tries to pick up her book, saying, and I quote, "Allow me, fair maiden." Which
he's a jokester, man. I think it's
not the smoothest line, but she totally rejects him. Like Gwen still hates him, but also somehow like doesn't, because in her thoughts she's always like, "But he's so irresistible."
Yeah, or deep down, I think he's probably has something going on. She even said like maybe there's a reason he's acting like this.
Yeah,
she doesn't know what the issues.
Which there is. It's showing that she's intelligent, which is part of her character.
Nice.
She's
definitely a popular girl in school, obviously. So it's definitely different from what most people think of. I think of Gwen right off the bat, at least with how she's been portrayed in the past probably like 20 years. It's just kind of being like a nerdy girl.
Yeah.
Man, not in Spider-Man 3, but like I'm thinking like Spectacular Spider-Man and then those type of. She was mostly portrayed. If she was portrayed at all as like a nerdy girl.
Yeah. I mean, she's always, because like later on down the line, Gwen Stacy was like, "Oh, she's the smart girlfriend of Peter's." Right. So like everyone's like, "Oh, she's even in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, it's like she's depicted as kind of like the wallflower, intelligent, whereas like she's a sought after popular girl who is almost like secretly intelligent. Like they kind of hint at it with like her thought process and kind of deducing that there's something going on with Peter, but then also like she's at that science exhibit and things like that where it's like, why is she there? That kind of makes sense. But Craven's plan, he disguises himself as Spider-Man to try to lure him out, and it works, and not much to talk about there. They have a little fight in a building where Craven laid a bunch of traps, some goons show up, they try to fight him. It's your average Spider-Man action sequence. There's not really much to talk about here,
Not the last time we'll see him wear a Spider-Man suit.
Not the last time. Yeah, that seems to be
Or
a
use
go-to.
his little his concoctions to replicate his powers, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit different of a story, saying I guess is he impersonated Spider-Man, but at the same time that literally happened in issue 1. So it's kind of like, right, chameleon person. So,
yeah. Which, interesting parallel, Chameleon and Craven are both kind of using the same tactic, and they're obviously connected.
Again, I find in this issue that I'm just reading Gwen's parts and Gwen trying to like kind of not break Peter out of his shell, but like get to talk to him through these issues. It's like, girl, run, just run, don't. You're not doing yourself any favors down the line, my friend. It's kind of crazy.
It's a bit morbid.
It's definitely really morbid, but it's really interesting to read, at least for me, because Green Goblin being my favorite, that being such a big arc, it's while sad, very interesting.
That was my biggest takeaway is like especially for 34, is the stuff with like Gwen and Betty in these issues. Like I could not really care less about the Craven story. Like it was just kind of a one-off. Like he fights Craven, he beats him, the end. But you know, getting to see a little bit more development with like Gwen and her perceptions of Peter. And then at the end of the issue is when we find out that Betty actually left the Daily Bugle. Which is seemingly that's why I say it's seemingly a definitive, like, I don't want to see Peter Parker. I'm trying to get over him. She leaves.
We don't know what happened. Even after the end of these, at the end of 38, we don't know what happened.
We do not know where she is, so I assume we'll find out. Peter automatically assumes that she ran off with Ned Leeds to marry him. But that is not the case, as we find out later. But overall, 34, I mean, I would rank it like a 5.
Yeah, like 5.5.
Like, there's nothing bad about it, but there's not really anything good about it.
Sadly, that's how I feel about all these issues.
Some more than others. I think 34 is one of the lower ones, in my opinion, out of these 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're probably already around the 5 range.
Yeah.
There is one part which was kind of interesting, which I noted that toward the beginning of the issue, Spider-Man heard sirens, and he decided not to go after them and see what's happening and see what's going on because he already had enough money.
That was in 34?
Yes, from taking pictures.
I totally forgot about that.
Which I was like, well, I thought we went out, you're backtracking here. Come on.
I thought the same thing. That happened, and I was like, come on now, Peter. Responsibility, you know.
Now, what if those sirens were going because someone's in your house again? We would... This happened years ago, Spider-Man.
Yeah, he kind of pulls the, like, oh, that's not my problem. It's like, we've established that it is.
So, I kind of like that, though, because I feel like over the years, Peter Parker's made to be this perfect person, but this perfect morally good person, which is kind of not realistic at all. Like, I don't
He's
think
still growing.
Yeah, even then, but you haven't, like, there's no person that's just like all the time 100% perfect.
Yeah,
and it's like kind of nice, but also kind of like, hey, supposed to be that person. You're supposed to at least try to be that person. That's what you're supposed to do. Try to be that person, at least.
Well, that's something that I think is really...
You dropped the ball with that one.
It's really core to Spider-Man's character, is his sense of responsibility, his sense of morality. This is something I'm going to be talking a lot more in depth about in a video I'm making about the Maximum Carnage storyline, because Maximum Carnage really, really dives into that theme. That video is probably up on my YouTube by the time this episode's out. If you want to check it out. But, so that's where, like, seeing this, yeah, like, he's not fully there yet, because there is one moment in Maximum Carnage where he sees some people getting mugged or whatever, and he's, like, currently in pursuit of Carnage, and he's like, oh, I can't help them, like, I need to go chase after Carnage, like, that's not my problem. And then he hesitates, and he goes, what am I talking about? Like, of course it is. And he goes and he helps them. And so I think that's something where you kind of see that growth over time, where, like, right now he's having that opinion of, like, oh, that's not my problem. But I think as he makes more mistakes and more bad stuff happens to him or people he cares about, he'll start to really take that a bit more personally, I think. But moving on to issue 35, yes. The Return of the Molten Man, the villain that nobody wanted back. Well, you liked his first appearance, didn't you? If I remember correctly.
For as much as you can like a Molten Man on issue.
I feel like I remember you saying you liked that one.
I thought you did like Molten Man.
I used to. I used to think he was really cool, but honestly, I'm over him. But
Pretty.
what I thought was pretty dumb about this issue is he obviously gets out of jail. You know, he's been a perfect prisoner, or whatever, and then he's just immediately like, now I'm gonna go kill Spider-Man. It's like his motive doesn't make any sense because in his
Also, you could.
what
Sorry,
were we
go ahead.
saying?
He could easily broke out of prison.
He could have easily broke out of prison, but aside from that, it's like in his first appearance, he was just some dude. The metal whatever fell on him, and then he just kind of went into a rampage. So there was no motive there. Like, I already thought in the first appearance that his motive didn't make any sense, but then now he's getting out of prison. He's just like, now I'm gonna go kill Spider-Man. And it's like, why do you want to do that? Is it because he put you in prison? But like, it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
One thing I'll mention too is in 34, there's a lot of obviously talking in between characters that aren't Kraven and Spider-Man, and there's, I guess, lulls in the action, which I'm fine with, but Dan mentioned in the issue, and then in this issue, it's right to the action, and it pretty much like doesn't stop for a while. So I did note that just because I think it was interesting. I bet they thought like issue 34 didn't have enough action. Let's just get right to it in issue 35.
Right, which I think that's something that I'm glad that modern comics don't do anymore. I feel like Stan does not give his readers enough credit. Because he'll, like, if he has any storytelling without action, he's like, I'm sorry, guys, the action's coming. And I'm like, no, I want the storytelling. Like, I want give me more scenes with Gwen and Peter. Like, that is what I want.
He's probably mostly trying to.
It's for the kids, you know. Yeah. Back
Which,
then, comics have evolved.
I was like that too. I mean, when I was like, really young, I was like, man, screw this. I don't care.
Yeah, comics have evolved. That is certainly true. Whereas, like, nowadays, I feel like writers can write, you know, a novel in a comic book, and it's like, it's fine.
Also, it was really interesting to see Molten Man smoking.
Oh yeah.
Like, how does that work?
He's got iron lungs, man.
Iron lungs.
What I do think is funny is, so Molten Man goes in disguise to rob a bank and fight Spider-Man and catch him off guard or whatever. And I don't know what technology they got back in the 60s, but apparently it's really easy to have a realistic mask because Patch has one, he has one, I think Norman uses one at some point, and I'm just like, there's no chance that looks real.
They got access to high-quality silicone. They all got them.
Yeah. I don't... Whatever, you know, I can suspend my disbelief enough, but I just thought that was funny. But Spider-Man ends up suspecting Molten Man, so he goes, checks him out at his home, he follows him on the street, and he's just living a normal life. I do think it's funny, he's literally just walking down the street, and no one's turning their head at the, like, gold guy walking down the street.
I mean, you got the Fantastic Four, you got the Avengers, you got, you know, there's Thor running around. I mean, even then, they've probably seen a bunch of stuff.
I guess. I think it would turn some heads.
I would definitely. But I'll tell you, I really like Ditko's art in the 5 issues. I don't know why. I don't know if it's different or I'm just noticing it, but I really do like the way he drew Spider-Man in these 5 issues. Like, it just looks very crisp and clean, and
it definitely looks a lot better than the like beginning of the series.
No, it definitely.
And I do like the one thing that I do like about Molten Man is the art of them fighting is pretty good because like the yellow contrasted against the red and blue, like it's very colorful. One thing that I really loved in this fight scene that happened, so Molten Man goes, robs a bank, Spider-Man stops him. You know the story. I love how Stan goes, we promised R.D. Simic, which is the letterer. He goes, we promised him we let him go wild with sound effects for a page or two, so here goes. And then it's just a bunch of panels of like, thwop, patwee, brock, kapow. Like the classic, like cheesy comic book. Like I was imagining like if this was a TV show or a movie, it'd be like, bam, bam, like colorful, goofy, like.
It was fun to read. It was a little bit of a break.
It was a break from the reading, yeah.
And I think it was a break for Stan, and even when he did it in issue 38, he even said it was. You could tell that he just didn't want to write all this dialogue for what.
Because they do that multiple times. Like they literally just let R.D. Simic go wild with the lettering, and I'm here for it. You know.
I honestly think because if you look at some of these issues, I don't know when they started doing this, but I noticed in these issues it says plotted plus artwork by Steve Ditko. So it's kind of fun to with what we know, which we really don't know what happened at the end of the day, like see how.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like, plot and artwork.
Give me plot because I'm plotting these things out. So start putting plot in my. You know what I mean? Or next to my name.
Because I think Steve Ditko was going like, here's what's gonna happen, and then Stan Lee was actually writing the script of what is said. So yeah, at least they're giving him that credit, which is nice.
Well, it's the Marvel way. I thought it was like Stan gave him, or at least maybe not with these books, but Stan gave him the plot, usually, and then they would draw it, and then he would put dialogue to it. Wasn't that like the Marvel method?
The Marvel method.
They coined it that, right?
So the Marvel method is a very controversial. This is actually a great moment to talk about it because these are Steve Ditko's last issues. The Marvel method is a very controversial thing in Marvel Comics history because it's basically take a bunch of creators, put them in a room, and just they create the comic book, right? Like it's not like nowadays where the writer will plot it out, they'll write a script, they'll send it over to the artist. Like nowadays, the writer will literally write how many panels are on a page and what is depicted in them, and the artist will just draw it, and they'll add their own spin on it, but that's pretty much how it's done. And so you can easily credit writer, artist, and it's good. But back in the Marvel method days, it was kind of just like everyone would contribute in their own way. And so it was more of a collaborative experience. And so that ended up becoming a point of tension for Steve Ditko because he felt like he wasn't getting enough credit for what he was doing. Right. Which ultimately that's why these were his last 5 issues. I'm pretty sure, and I will confirm before next week's episode. But I think actually the plot of 39 and 40 is why Steve Ditko left.
That's what I've always heard too.
That's what I'll do more research so we can actually talk about it in that episode. But so yeah, I do like to see. I think you can kind of tell that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's relationship was getting a little more tense because he is giving him that plot credit in here, where they're like trying to appease him, and it's about to hit a boiling point.
And what do you think Stan's doing all these like kapow bang? Just it's like this is so like I can't really write anything to this.
Yeah, and they just wanted to have a good old action scene, and
other than it's like, oh, I'm jumping now and doing this, and then I'll take care of these guys in a lickety split, and then
that is the one thing that is the hardest part about reading these old books is when the characters narrate what they're doing. I'm like, there's art, we can see what you're doing. Sometimes it provides a little insight into their thought process, but like most of the time it's completely pointless. But
yeah.
But yeah, he fights Molten Man. Molten Man gets away, ends up going home, but Spider-Man beats him there, and he ends up what's the word for this? Cattle what's it called when like a person like ropes up an animal?
God.
You know what I'm talking about? Not like hog tying.
Tie?
Yeah,
no,
kind of, but like
a lasso.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a phrase I'm trying to think of. I can't think of it. But Spider-Man ties him up pretty expertly, if I'm being honest.
That is a hog tie, is it not?
It is, yeah. But he's fighting him, and I would love to see this in like a movie. Like he's fighting him, and he wraps like a rope around one hand and the other hand, and gets him tied up, and that's how he ends up beating Molten Man and he has the photographic evidence of him breaking into the bank, so he can actually get sent back to jail. So
I will say one thing that I thought was pretty interesting is when Spider-Man was following Molten Man, and he goes into a building, right? And Spider-Man's waiting for Molten Man to come back out, and Molten Man comes back out in a disguise. And then Spider-Man goes right to like try to, attack him, right? I was like, are they gonna do the thing where it's not actually Molten Man, it's just some random guy that pops out, and it's gonna be like, oh my god, Spider-Man just kicked my butt for no reason. He's a menace. But it was actually Molten Man.
Yeah. Well, he had the spider tracer, so he knew it was him.
Is that why he knew it was him?
I would guess so, yeah.
He just looked right at him and was like...
Because the spider tracers use his spider sense, so as soon as he walked out, he probably had that sense of, like, this is him.
But he changed outfit, so he still have the spider tracker on him?
Yeah. Apparently. I don't know. But the ending of this book...
But it would have been... I feel like if Molten Man was a smarter villain, there would have definitely been, like, if it was Doc Ock or the Green Goblin or somebody, you would have seen a random person come out, and then it would have flashed forward to, I saw Spider-Man chasing me, so I had to go out a different exit, that type of thing. Yeah. But I feel like Molten Man just isn't that guy.
Molten Man, he's not that guy.
He's got the rocks, the metal for him.
But at the end of this issue is also when Peter learns that Betty has left the Daily Bugle, and he gets upset. And shout out Steve Ditko's art. The very last panel of this book is Peter Parker walking away with like the outline of Betty's head and hair, and like shattered glass, and it says "the end." So that's why I'm saying definitively This is the end. I think that panel denotes that Peter and Betty are not happening. Like, there may still be a bit of, like, she comes back and that's emotional for him, but, like, the hope of them being together, over.
Yeah, I would agree.
But overall, 35 is another... Oh, I do have this one right here. Issue 35.
Very nice.
Didn't even realize I had it. I went digging through my box and found it. But that's another one I would rate like 5, honestly.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of same old stuff.
Yeah, it's like...
in terms of villain.
Molten Man, don't really care. Yeah.
Again, these issues for me were underwhelming.
Yeah.
And this is just... I'm mostly following the Betty Brant, Gwen, Peter. Like you said, that's what I'm most interested in these.
Yeah, Peter's social
until
life
we get
is
to
the big
issue
takeaway.
37, which I will not be able to shut up about because I'm a fanboy, but we'll get to
Well, then we should get there and move on to issue 36. So, 36. Now, I was really excited to read this one. Only because, now you talked about the covers for these issues. Me personally, I freaking love this cover. Now, I do have this issue as well. Pretty good copy, displays really well. I love the colors on this cover. I love the pose that Spider-Man's in. I love the, like, I think those are supposed to be like planets, or yeah, I guess there's the sun and planets orbiting around. It's a very, very cool cover. I really, really like it. So I was excited to read it, and I knew nothing about the Looter. I do know that he kind of comes back in the comics later, but he's not really, he's like a D-list villain. I was pleasantly surprised about this issue, but not wowed. There's the dog cameo. Gotta have the dog cameo. Guess I'll just keep talking then. I was surprised. Like, this issue was good when it could have been terrible, but it wasn't mind-blowing. Basically, so the summary, there's a guy who is wanting to be a scientist, but he also mentions that he flunked science in high school at some point, so I'm like, how are you...
He's just a nut.
Oh, yeah, he's a nut. Which I think Stanley even says. He's like, you guessed it, this guy is a part-time nut. But he finds a meteor, and the meteor has, like, gas trapped in it, which gives him strength. I'm noticing that just, like, any random thing will give people super strength.
And we'll see that in issue 38, which is probably the most ridiculous display of that. But I kind of like the Looter. I was like, oh, kind of cool. I think the Looter is a cool name. I think
the
for D-list villains, I think
the Looter's a cool name, but I wish he had more interesting powers. Like, it's just like, he's strong. We've seen that. We've seen that. How many supervillains are just like, I'm strong? But he's like, all right, now I can get the money I need because I have superpowers, so I'm going to go steal money and fund my research with that, yada, yada, yada. Ends up trying to steal a meteor to keep his powers. Spider-Man beats him. The end. That's the summary. The most important thing.
It's actually successful at stealing money for, like, he said he went on, like, a spree for, like, a week, which you usually don't see for these type of characters.
Yeah. Spider-Man was busy at school.
Right.
Which he even says, like, because I've been busy with my fights with Kraven and Molten Man, I've been missing classes, so I need to focus on, like, going to classes. And this is when you really see him start to be like, oh, let me try and make a good impression on my classmates. And so he goes up and tries to be like, how's it going, guys? And my favorite scene in this issue is when Gwen and her friend, whose name I don't think we know, are like... She's like, I don't know. I think you're wrong about Parker. I think he's nice. And Gwen's like, yeah, right. You know, go ahead and try and prove it. And so she goes to talk to Peter. Now, this was the perfect opportunity for Peter to change people's perceptions of him, and he completely drops the ball.
Yep.
Completely drops the ball.
He was doing well until he was like, oh, I'm not just going to be another, bird brain. Is that what he says? Bird brain. Or just another smart guy that's going to go and, even out all the jocks that are going.
He says, egghead.
Egghead.
Yeah, he's being nice. They're hitting it off. She's inviting him to a party. Even Gwen around the corner is like, wow, they're hitting it off so well. I didn't think, yada, yada. And the girl he's talking to is like, wow, he's so dreamy and look at his smile. Like, he's totally nailing it. And then she mentions something like, oh, I want someone with brains there instead of all these dumb jocks, which is a nice thing to say. Like, that's a compliment. And he goes, oh, she just thinks I'm an egghead. And then he completely blows her off. and totally ruins the progress that he was making, which further proves that Peter just does not know how to interact with people.
Horrible social skills, yeah.
Horrible. Also, like, what do you like? I don't know if this is like a '60s thing, but like, if someone's telling you like, "Oh, you're smart. I want you instead of the jocks," is that an insult in the '60s?
I guess it is to Peter.
I guess so.
But even then, I feel like it would be. I mean, I guess it depends on the person. If Peter just doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah, he wants to be thought of as the big beefy,
Big muscle man.
which
Also, I think it's Spider-Man in this one, but he keeps calling the word pussycat is used in this issue like 5 times, and it's really just jarring because all of a sudden he's just calling everybody, or he's calling this guy a pussycat, which I think he's calling the looter's actual name, or looter in general.
I think that is slang from the '60s.
Well, no, I know what it is. I know, but it's just jarring that it's just all of a sudden it's a weird thing to call someone.
Yeah.
Or at least.
What?
I don't know. You're like, imagine nowadays someone walks up to you like, "Man, you're a pussycat."
I mean, people have abbreviated that.
You're calling me a kitten, like a little baby cat.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to take offense to that?
I mean, I don't know if it's really an offensive thing. I think it's more just like a.
He's like a coward.
I guess, yeah.
That's
well,
what I would see it.
I mean, you can think of a modern day similar.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm not even trying to get at that I'm just saying it's just such a strange thing.
Well, I think
like,
that's where it kind of came from. Like, I feel like in the '60s it was like calling someone a pussycat, and then nowadays it's abbreviated and it's obviously morphed a lot. But so that's interesting that because like nowadays you wouldn't write that in a comic book, right? Like that's obviously a little bit too much. So I guess maybe it was less big of a deal back then, or maybe Stan just didn't care. I'm guessing it's probably the first one, but
I'm not even saying that it's abbreviated nowadays. It's just like an odd thing to call somebody.
It is, yeah.
I think it's pretty great. And it was jarring to just see it all of a sudden used like 5 times in this issue.
Yeah.
I will say, you said that the looter comes back. I was wondering if he ever does. Mm-hmm. So
I'm fairly certain he does, yeah.
And then also, I really enjoyed when the looter tries to get away from Spider-Man and uses that parachute of his to start slowly lifting up. Like he's like, "So long, you're never gonna catch me," as he slowly lifts into the air, and Spider-Man immediately just climbs a wall and meets him up there.
Yeah.
And I think the aerial fight was pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I liked that he had the web. Like he had one arm and one foot on a web, and then was fighting with his other hand and foot. A big setting for this issue was the science exhibit because that's where Looter was trying to steal the meteorite. And it's also where we see a little bit more Peter and Gwen development. Because Peter's at the space exhibit and Gwen sees him and she goes, "Oh, it's Peter Parker. I wonder if this is fate. This could be my chance to really get to know him. I'll accidentally bump into him." So this is when I was really starting to be like, okay, she has a crush on Peter, obviously. Like, she's had some like, oh, he's kind of interesting. Oh, he's not like going after me, whatever. I think this is kind of the classic trope of like the girl wants the guy who isn't going after her. Like the girl who is sought after by every guy in the school wants the one guy who isn't going after her. And
because he's not going after.
Because exactly, yeah. And so she starts doing like the classic like, I'll try to bump into him accidentally, and you see him like her like in the back of a panel while he's walking. And she's like, either he hasn't noticed me or he's ignoring me. Just immediately goes to the worst case. And then Looter comes in, and that gosh darn Parker luck, he goes running off to change into Spider-Man to save the day. Gwen sees him run off and goes, "Oh, he's a coward."
Well, that's classic. And she was not happy with him after he returned as Peter Parker to the exhibit.
Which, one thing from that, like her thinking he's a coward, him running off. First of all, I'm thinking like, okay, isn't it obvious? He runs off, Spider-Man shows up, he leaves, and then Peter comes back. But aside from that, I don't actually know this. Does Gwen ever actually find out his secret identity?
I don't think so. It's just kind of crazy.
That's pretty wild, because obviously in the movie it was like almost immediately.
I think I could be wrong, but from what I know, it was like till the end. She just never found out.
I guess we'll find out. in time.
I'm not even gonna look it up. I'm just gonna wait because I'm pretty sure she does.
That's
not,
what I mean. Yeah,
like,
we'll find out reading it.
Which is, it's just sad, dude. It's just sad.
It is. Well, people probably thought they were gonna last longer, and she would find out at some point, but they didn't quite make it there. I'm also interested to see because I personally have no clue when Mary Jane figures out or finds out.
I do.
Don't even tell me. We'll find out when it happens because I do not remember at all when that happens. But
I do. It's I want to say it so bad. I won't do it.
when is it?
Like in the 257 or something like that.
Yeah, I know it's not for a while.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Oh no, she actually figures it out.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to see that happen because I didn't know that. Now shout out. I think Artie Simic does the text bubbles, but he did the icy text bubble when she's like mad at Peter again, which we've seen that with Betty Brant. I really love when they do that. It really adds that nice flavor to the iciness coming from her.
Yep.
And I especially love, she goes, "It's hard to believe that anyone so manly looking could be a coward."
So I guess he's starting to look muscular in his old age because
he's ditched those awful glasses and sweater vests. Like he's dressing up a little nicer.
Because they used to call him scrawny.
Yeah.
So now I guess he's beefing. He's bulking.
Which makes sense, you know. I mean, we see him later, and he's obviously beefcake. So
that's why I like Romita's presentation of him. I think he looks the best.
Mark Bagley draws some muscles on that man.
Yeah, but it's not like they're just very ripped. They're not necessarily large in size.
Agree to disagree.
Well, I'd have to look at Mark Bagley. Well, I get you.
But yeah, so then Spider-Man fights Luthor, beats him. The end. Not much to take away from that. Like I said, the biggest takeaways from these issues is the Gwen and Peter stuff, which, you know, that's all it is. But overall, I'd rate this issue 6 out of 10.
5.5 to 6, yeah, depends.
Like, it's better than the last two, but it's still not that good.
I would say out of all these, it's the second best.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now I'll get to my favorite one. Which,
take it away.
Issue 37, which stretch. I do have.
I used to have it. I think I traded it.
And we all know why I have it. If you don't already, I'm a massive fan of the Green Goblin.
I think they know.
They know, unless it's their first episode. And so obviously, this is the first appearance of Norman Osborn as Norman Osborn in the Amazing Spider-Man, or in general. Now, at this point, we don't know if it's the Green Goblin yet.
But I have made my case in a previous episode of Webheads that this is not actually the first appearance of Norman Osborn. And I'm not talking about the panels with his face hidden.
Right.
There was that one issue. I don't even remember what issue it was.
I don't know.
But there was a person that definitely looked a whole lot like Norman Osborn talking to JJ.
And
we know they know each other.
This helps that. But it's technically his first appearance because even like
by name,
you saw their faces in books, and that wasn't their first appearance. It was their cameo. 300 is the first full appearance. So this is his first full appearance.
Yeah.
First official appearance.
First time he's named.
For me, yes. For me, I did not know that he was such a big part of this issue. Actually, just a main character in this issue. I thought it was always kind of like a couple panels where he was, dropping Harry off at school or something like that. For whatever reason, that's how I remembered it. But no, he is from start to finish, a mainstay in this issue. Also, I think at this point, obviously, this is issue 37. We find out in issue 39 that he's the Green Goblin.
Oh,
right?
Spoilers, man.
I mean, come on. We find out he's the Green Goblin. I think at this point, Stan kind of knows what he wants to do with Norman immediately. And you can see that through multiple different things, which I'll definitely point out. That he kind of hints at him not being the Green Goblin, probably being the Green Goblin, but being something more than just an average guy.
What I was very surprised by, because obviously I knew, Norman Osborn's coming around in 2 issues. We're going to find out that he's Green Goblin. So, obviously I knew there wasn't going to be a whole lot of time before we know. I was very surprised that immediately they're like, no, this guy's bad. He knocks Spider-Man out. He it's heavily alluded to the fact that he shoots Strom. So,
I mean,
okay,
yeah.
so basically the main plot of the story, Strom, a former associate of Norman Osborn, who he kind of betrayed and got him arrested, he gets out of jail and he goes after Norman with robots to get revenge, and Spider-Man saves him, and Norman ends up, someone ends up shooting Dr. Strom. And it's heavily alluded that it's Norman Osborn. And it's at like a window up in the air. And so Spider-Man's like, where did he go? How did he do that? Now, obviously, nowadays we're like, oh, he had his glider. Obviously, he was Green Goblin, which is kind of the image of Green Goblin holding a shotgun through a window, kind of funny. But I was very surprised. I thought that it was just going to be like, here's Norman Osborn, Harry's dad. And then you find out he's Green Goblin. But they're like, no, Norman's bad. And then we find out he's Green Goblin. So that surprised me.
Yeah, I think it was really cool. I mean, I would have loved to know when the conversation between Ditko and Steve started on what or who Norman was going to be and who Green Goblin was going to be. But if it didn't in this issue, Stan just kind of went with it and it was like, I'm going to make this guy at least somebody.
Yeah.
At some point.
Like I will do the research before next week and we can fully talk about it, but I'm fairly certain that Steve Ditko didn't want Norman Osborn to be Green Goblin.
Right.
I don't remember who he wanted Green Goblin to be.
He wanted to be no one we knew.
Maybe that was it, yeah. But that was a huge disagreement that they had. And ultimately that was, I think, why he ended up leaving the book. But
It at least was the last straw. But no, yeah, I remember it was Stan wanted to be someone we knew and Ditko did not. He wanted to be some random guy.
yeah, which I'm kind of team Stan on that one.
Yeah, no, that's fully like, I mean, how many random people that?
Well, when you've teased and alluded to his identity so much,
Yeah,
it kind of has to have a payoff. It can't be like, it's Joe. And you're like, who's Joe?
Joe Smith.
Yeah, Joe Smith, man. The most generic name possible. I think that was kind of intended, but
Yeah.
you will talk about Norman Osborn and all of that all you want. My takeaway from this book, more Gwen Stacy, man, because this had another great scene with them where I think we're really starting to see the blossoming of a relationship here, because Peter goes and tries to talk to Gwen. He's like, hey, we're heading to the same class. Like, can I walk with you? And she's like, no, blah, blah, blah. You're usually too stuck up to say hi to anyone. And then Peter, again, puts his foot in his mouth, and he's like, well, at least I'm not a temperamental female who drools over a fellow one day and then acts like an icicle to him the next. And he even says in a thought bubble, he's like, man, that temper of mine, like, I've really put my foot in it. So at least he's self-aware about it. But my favorite thing is she goes to, like, kind of slap him, and his spider speed, he just goes, psh, and like stops it and whacks her hand, and she even says like, ow, like he obviously hit her kind of hard. So she sees that he's strong, she sees a little bit of like, oh. And what I love is as he's like hitting her hand, he goes, anyone ever tell you you're gorgeous when you're angry? And I was like, dang, Peter's smooth out here. He's coming in with the one-liners. So that was when everything changed, I think. Because then Flash comes in, kind of interrupts the conversation. But Gwen, in her thoughts, is just like, wow, Peter wasn't scared of Flash. Like, he's strong. He's, whatever. She's.
Also, I gotta say it. Those little clips in the front of her hair, always, when I first look at them, make it look like she has horns.
They are a little weird, yeah. I'm waiting for the iconic headband.
And yeah, classic.
Yeah, classic. But
That's probably definitely Romina.
But yeah, this is the beginning of. That's why, like, that is the thing that I was looking at the most and enjoying the most about these issues, because like, I'm really excited to see the arc of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. Obviously, like, I didn't even realize she hated him at first. So like, going from her hating him to liking him and them dating and then obviously falling in love and ultimately the ending of that story. That's what I'm here for, the ride. And so I'm watching for all those little bits of just like, he's starting to put the moves on, which I think is really funny. Like he's actually being kind of smooth and trying to go for it. So we'll see where that goes.
So Strong sends his first robot to a facility in which Norman owns to pretty much destroy it. So hit him where it hurts, he says, and hit him in his wallet to like destroy this facility. And obviously Spider-Man kind of smells the smoke of fire that's going on in there, goes in, tackles the robot down, gets him in the fire. Actually, the robot starts outmatching Spider-Man. And even says like, oh, he's got tentacles, it's shaved with Doc Ock. And to get the little robot, tentacle robot, off, he kind of jumps into the fire. The robot ends up getting ruined, or getting destroyed. And as Spider-Man's coming out of the fire, obviously people are going to say, okay, Spider-Man started the fire.
Obviously, yeah.
We also find out that JJ and Norman are in the same, I guess, club of some sort.
Yeah, I think it's like a gentleman's club type thing.
Right. And so JJ's like, listen, we know Spider-Man did this. We're going to get him. We're going to, plaster him all over the news, that. And Norman's like, it wasn't him. He knows right off the bat it wasn't him because he knows Spider-Man. He knows Spider-Man not going to do that. He knows he's actually a hero. So there's your first hint, first shade of he knows a little bit more than he probably should if he was a normal person.
That, but also I was like, I think he also knows that it's Strom.
Probably a little bit of both, I would say.
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. I think it might be like a little bit of a hint, but it's not too obvious because I think you could also look at it and be like, he obviously knows it's Strom because he knows that he got out of jail and he knows that he betrayed him, yada yada. It makes sense. He was probably expecting that.
Right, and we see the first Norman and Harry.
We see Norman being an absolute dick to Harry.
Right.
Which is, par for the course.
Patch is back in this issue as well.
Yes.
So.
And I think Spider-Man's starting to get on the trail of figuring out that he's Foswell because he's literally like, oh, I can't get a lead on Foswell. I guess I'll just follow Patch. Like, you're starting to see a little bit of association between the two.
We'll see it probably happen. The reveal happen at some point, I would hope.
Yeah. I'm very interested to see. Like, it's so crazy to me that, like, how much in these early issues, Foswell is just as much a main side character as, like, JJ is. But obviously, overall in, like, the mythos of Spider-Man, that's not the case. So I'm interested to see, like, what happens with Foswell and when he kind of goes away. Because, obviously, like, if you think of, like, name Spider-Man side characters, people will be like J. Jonah Jameson, Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane, Betty Brant, Flash Thompson, all these people. But most people wouldn't say Foswell. But he is just as important. Like, he is just as big in the Daily Bugle as Betty Brant and JJ is, character-wise.
So something must happen.
Maybe he dies or something. Yeah, I don't know. But
that probably happens somewhat soon to the point where after decades of other issues, he just kind of gets lost in the mess. But Straw makes another robot. This time it's big and metal. It shoots a big old laser beam.
A little bit more stereotypical of a robot.
It goes right into Norman's office, crashes into the door, and instead of killing him at first, just starts destroying everything because he wants to destroy his finance, destroy everything that is important to him, and then kill Norman.
Yep.
As this is happening, though, because Spider-Man placed a tracer on the robot earlier, Spider-Man comes into the window and starts fighting the robot, in which Norman says, why is he here? Why is he doing this? First off, again, like, kind of already, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking into it, but I think it's pretty cool. Why is he here,
You can tell he's got a little bit of a, like, he even says, I think, something along the lines of, like, Spider-Man's going to ruin all my plans. I need to stop him. And so you're thinking, like, what plans?
He said he hopes the robot just finishes it.
Yeah.
Just kills him.
Obviously, we've talked about how I'm trying to read these as if I don't know what's going to happen, right? It's a little hard to do that with Norman Osborn. Like, obviously I know he's Green Goblin. I really wonder if anyone predicted or suspected it from this issue. Like, I genuinely don't know if you would read this and go like, oh, he's an evil businessman who has some plans, or if you would connect the dots and be like, he's the Green Goblin.
Definitely, probably, at least, I would definitely say, oh, he's probably somebody. And, oh, what if he's someone we know? And then I'm sure if someone back then really dug into it, they could probably be like, oh, he could be this guy or this guy or this guy. The Green Goblin might fall into that category. But this is issue 37. The last time Goblin was in an issue was 26. So if he's coming out monthly, it's been like probably more than a year.
More than a year, yeah.
Since Goblin's been in a new issue. So I'd be surprised if anybody was like, oh, damn, it's probably the Green Goblin. If this happened in issue,
he is wearing a green suit,
which is great. I really hope that was probably not, because the inkers would do that.
You never know.
So
you never know.
Again, I think that would be anybody with Stan's doing.
But Norman knocks Spider-Man over the head with a rock. He knocks him out, which indicates strength.
Punched him.
Oh, he does. Yeah. Spider-Man thinks he got hit by flying debris.
Yeah, I even put it because he got Norman punched him in the back of the head, knocked Spider-Man out, which you don't see that happening even when he gets punched. I mean, he's been punched by the Molten Man, and he's like, ow, that really hurts. But
Indicates strength.
a lot of strength. Even when Spider-Man gets up, he says, I must have been hit. King-sized piece falling debris.
Yep.
Which, nope, it was just the left hand of arch nemesis.
I do think at this point, yeah, they're obviously alluding to him being Green Goblin intentionally, right? Like, the showing that strength in the punch, obviously the shot coming through a window, and then Spider-Man being like, wait, but how did he vanish so soon from this window? It's like he had a glider, you know, like they're dropping little breadcrumbs to hint, setting up what readers back then probably thought was a new mystery, right? Like there was already the mystery of who's Green Goblin. Now there's this Norman Osborn character, and people are going, what's going on with him? And so it probably blew a lot of people's minds when it turned out that they were the same mystery.
Yeah, I think I was thinking, like, okay, issue 37 he's introduced, issue 39 he's revealed. It's probably like, people are like, oh, we just met him. But actually, even after reading this issue, I feel like I would have been pretty into it when the reveal happened.
Yeah.
Be like, oh my god, the Green Goblin back then, all this time it's been this guy, and after 7, I think it would have been pretty cool even back then.
Well, and it really carries over into the next issue, which before we dive into that, how would you rate 37?
6.5. I think it was really cool. I think if you take Norman Osborn out of it, I give it like 5. I think you put him in, it bumps it up a couple notches for him.
Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy carried the issue for me. Don't really care about Strom or his robots, so I would agree like 6.5, where it was kind of just, you know, it was good, but it wasn't.
I think it was really cool that, like, first off, Strom died of a heart attack, not getting shot.
Yeah.
Because Norman missed, and then he died of a heart attack, which was an interesting thing. Why didn't you just make him get shot?
A little weird.
But, yeah, a little weird, but yeah, obviously, he had his glider. I wonder if he suited up fully or he was just in a suit.
That's what I'm saying. The image of Green Goblin floating out a window with a gun.
If he put his mask on and everything, there's no way. I think he was just in a suit. That would be pretty cool too.
We'll never know.
It's fun. And then, so yeah, Strom dies of a heart attack. Norman's like rubbing his rifle, so obviously
it was him. Yeah, obviously.
Shot the bullet. But he says at the end of this that Spider-Man's gotta be dealt with. Something's gonna happen.
And that happens in the next issue, issue 38.
I think that this also is why 39 and 40, or at least 39, this set him back on Spider-Man.
Yep.
Yeah. Because you haven't seen him in probably even real time, probably been like a year or and a half real time since issue 26 inside of this universe. So I think this kind of set Norman's sights right back on.
He's
been hiding.
We've talked about it before in the last appearances of Green Goblin, where why he kind of fixated on Spider-Man, and then I think he said in his last appearance, I don't remember, but he was something along the lines of like, I'm gonna lay low for a while, I'm gonna yada yada, and then I think Spider-Man getting involved in this whole business with Strom, I 100% agree. I think he's like, oh, I gotta take care of him now. But we don't see Green Goblin taking care of him. We see Norman Osborn taking care of him, because Norman Osborn goes to hire. He puts out a bounty on Spider-Man, basically. So all of the underworld is like, yo, let's go get Spider-Man. And this issue kind of has two storylines. There's that, and then there's this guy named Joe. Joe Smith, who wants to be a boxer, but he's a terrible fighter. He tries being a wrestler, but he gets beat. Some dude gets him a job as an actor, and he's playing like a supervillain in a movie. And a freak accident. Let's talk about this for a second. A light falls. They call it an arc light, but it's a light like you would use in a stage production or a movie.
It's like when I got like above me.
Yeah. Like
I've high tech.
I've worked. I did theater tech in high school. I've worked with these type of lights. Like it's just like it's a fancy light. Falls on some, and this was the part I actually laughed out loud when I was reading it, because it shows the rock hitting the light, and they're like, heads up, it's falling in a puddle of spilled chemicals from the previous scene.
It's almost like a spoof. It feels spoofy.
It feels like a parody. I'm like, first of all, you used real chemicals in this movie? Like, no one does that. You're filming a movie, you use some fake stuff. And this light falls on these chemicals, which electrocutes him, and gives him super strength / kind of sends him into a rampage.
Makes him crazy. It gives him really bad anger issues.
Very weird. Very
it's like the
weird.
Hulk, in which he says, "The madder I get, the stronger I get."
I did notice that.
I was waiting for Spider-Man to be like, "Well, it sounds familiar."
Yeah.
But yeah, Joe, the character, pretty much wants to be a boxer, not good at it. Goes to be an actor. This happens. He goes mad and is like, everybody laughed at me. Everyone said it was nothing. I'm gonna be something. I'm gonna be the champion. And he just starts, whenever he gets into this like fit of rage, he just starts punching everybody that's in like his vicinity.
Yeah.
There's also his manager that is kind of like his guardian in a way, like
caretaker,
like,
kind of
yeah,
took him
that
under
type
his
of thing.
wing, sort of.
Right, that took him under his wing. So there's that to mention as well. Like, he's the one who got him the job to be the actor.
Yeah.
That gets him another job. Well, actually, no. So that happens. He goes like bonkers because they start filming another scene the same day after this happens. So he gets absolutely electrocuted, and they're like, "All right, you can feel better. Let's do the scene." And then that's when he starts punching the actors and kicking their butt, and crashes through studio walls and goes into the city, where that's obviously you meet Spider-Man fighting him.
Yeah, he fights Spider-Man, or he gets away. The manager takes him to his home, and he's like, "You gotta calm down, buddy." And he does not calm down.
In between that, though, see Norman.
Oh, I was gonna. Where's Norman? Oh, yeah, that's Norman hiring the. I was thinking of Ned Leeds. Peter and Ned Leeds have a little standoff.
Oh yeah, I think it's like one of the next.
Which when they're like, "Oh, I thought," like they both thought that Betty chose the other one, and it turns out she chose neither. That's all there really is to take away from this scene. Them just kind of fighting. One thing I did think was funny in the panel where they are looking at each other and pointing at each other. I never realized like Ned Leeds does look a lot like Peter, except for the blonde hair. So I think Betty has a type.
Well,
But what was the Norman scene? I don't even remember that.
Go back. So it's between the first fight with Joe and the one where he goes crazy in the apartment.
Right.
That's the scene.
Oh, when he goes in disguise. Yeah.
He puts on a disguise, classic disguise, goes and hires, or puts out a bounty for Spider-Man. So like that's one of the side stories. So every crook in the city pretty much sees Spider-Man as like, this is my shine. So he has a couple different fights, which is kind of rando, criminal. Joe goes back to the ring in which he was always mocked, beat them all up, which he does. Spider-Man obviously fears, while the wrestlers try to also get Spider-Man.
Apparently, they all heard about the bounty on him.
They all heard about the 10 or the 20K bounty,
which is a lot more money in the 60s.
So it's a lot more.
Probably a few $100,000. We do see more Peter Parker social failings.
For real. Yeah, we do. Spider-Man literally just punches Joe until his magical stars leave his head, and he's like better.
Yeah, I think he was just kind of out of it from like the chemical electrocution. And so I think that just a proper knock on the head really brought him back to being a good guy.
His condition should fade. He said at some point in it. I don't know if the cop said that or the manager said that or what. The manager comes back in and says, "Listen, Joe, they loved you. We got you a contract to be an actor, and they're bringing me along with you to be your manager." So actually, this story kind of ends happily for Joe because he doesn't get put in jail and he gets a 5-year contract to be an actor.
It's a villain with a little bit more depth because it's like it kind of wasn't his fault. Like the chemicals kind of put him into a rage, and so we get to see him redeemed at the end, and he actually gets a happy ending. So go Joe. But we do also see a happy ending for him. Not so much for Spider-Man though, because after his fight with Joe and the other goons trying to collect on the bounty, he really lashes out at a mannequin. That kind of looks like Ned Leeds. He's like, "This reminds me of Ned Leeds." Like you can tell he's really mad and upset over losing Betty, which is, like I said, we're seeing the process of a breakup, basically. And it also teases Mary Jane a little bit more. He just misses her.
Yep, and her face is hidden by some branches.
Yeah, which I think it's funny. It's like Mary Jane and Green Goblin are almost like this parallel. Like, they're these two characters whose faces have consistently been hidden, and it's like knowing how important both of them are in the overall story of Spider-Man, like Mary Jane obviously ending up being like his soulmate and Green Goblin being his nemesis. I think it's really funny that they're doing the same thing with both of them. But this issue pretty much ends with Peter being heartbroken and sad, and little does he know it's only going to get worse next issue.
Yes. This is also the end of the Ditko era.
The very end, yeah. Which, kind of an underwhelming end.
Yeah, but
he did not go out with a bang. But John Romita started with a bang.
He did. And I am ecstatic for those issues, which next week will be the first ever 2-issue.
Yeah, next week
podcast.
We have a Green Goblin extravaganza. We are doing a full episode for issue 39 and 40, and we may even have a guest. So you guys will have to wait and see. Not that you would know the guest, but we might have an extra person here for the next episode of Webheads. For issue 39 and 40. We did forget, I'm going to rank 38 5.
Yeah, I agree.
5, yeah.
5.5.
Yeah, it's like we said at the beginning, all the issues this week, kind of closing thoughts, pretty weak.
Yeah.
Not the best.
I did forget to mention, so I back in the day, I bought like a big lot of Marvel Tale starring Spider-Man. So I was able to read 3 of these issues from Marvel Tale. Fun.
Yeah.
They're on like 9, I think it's like 80s reprints, so it's like that type of print, which was cool.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to read like an actual physical single issue comic.
Yeah, we're getting up to the point now where
this is also the end of my omnibus.
I was gonna say, how are you gonna go? You're gonna get Marvel Unlimited or something.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get on Marvel Unlimited, read it on a little laptop. It's probably the way I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Unless I have the issues.
Right.
I'll read them from there, but other than that, yeah, the omnibus. I got my money's worth of it. Finally.
Yeah. That is
I don't know what to do with it now.
thick book.
Big. It's thick. And it's worn. I've definitely used it, you know?
Yeah.
I think back in the day, when I first read it, I read all the Goblin issues. And then, like, about it. And now I've read them all. Now, again, some of them I read from the actual issues, and then these ones I read from little single issue Marvel Tale.
Right.
Got my money's worth.
Yeah, I've pretty much read it on Marvel Unlimited. Which actually works great. I mean, if you have like a tablet or something, that's where I just read it on my iPad, so it's like full-size comic pages still, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, physical comic is better, but
I have like a hand-me-down Mac. Probably read them on there.
There you go. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this episode. So like we said, next week we will have 39 and 40, a full-size Green Goblin extravaganza, because honestly, I think those 2 issues are some of the most important issues in all of Spider-Man's history. So we'll have a very in-depth discussion about those.
And people that don't know that arc are probably going to be interested in seeing it. Because that hasn't been done. The whole... I won't spoil it. What happens with Goblin at the end of it doesn't really happen in a lot of media.
Like in movies and stuff?
Movies and TV. And...
Yeah, they haven't done that. Well, they
they
kind of did it with
They
Harry.
Kind of with Harry, but they haven't done it with Norman. And then they...
Yeah.
I think they did it in one of the cartoons. Kind of.
Maybe, I don't know. It's a very big moment for Spider-Man history.
I think they did it in the 90s cartoon.
I think really 39 and 40 is when they really established Green Goblin as his nemesis, and I think that it really is. It is what leads up to 121. I mean, because of what happens at the end of 40, that ultimately ends up kind of causing 121 and the death of Gwen Stacy. So we're really entering an important moment for Marvel history, and this will be the beginning of the John Romita run, which, like we said earlier, one of our favorite artists in the entire series. So Definitely stay tuned for that. That'll be out next week. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy this episode, make sure you leave a like if you're watching it on YouTube. Rate it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to it. Rate it 5 stars or whatever you think is fair. And share it. Other than that, if you want to check out any of our socials, you can go on YouTube. We got them all listed on the screen here and over there for him. And we will see you guys next week.
See you next week. Should be a good one.
Peace out.